Hey, hello and welcome back everyone. Welcome back to the MEG-01 video. MEG-01 unit number 1. From the evaluations of portraits towards the explications of poems. We are going to cover the MEG-1 unit number 1. So without any further wait, let's get started with the objectives. After going through this unit and the next one, you will get oriented for a study of this course. You will have a clear idea of your teacher's explications from you on this course, and you will be able to understand the relevance of three constituent parts of this course. For example, the historical background of the age, the biographical account of the poet, and finally the enjoyment and explications of the poem. Your study should finally enable you to provide insightful comments on passages selected from the 10 blocks of these courses. The orientations and the next unit will be helpful to you in planning your study. So let's get started with the introductions. On the first day at the postgraduate department of English, your portrait teacher would have given you a few tips on doing well on that course. Every subject is in a few respects different from other subject, hence the methodology to be followed to master it also has to be a little different. In this unit, I'll try to tell you a few general matters that you should keep in mind while doing this course. While going through the block, certain questions such as given below may crop up in your mind. A. What are the functions of this unit on the historical background of the age? B. What is the relevance of a knowledge of the poet's life and work to the understanding of the prescribed poems? What should I focus my attention upon? The poem, the biographies, or the backgrounds to the periods of which the referent poets belong? D. Are the frontispieces in the various blocks mean to teach me at a facet to my understanding of the age and its poetic output, or are they just to improve the aesthetic appeal of this block? This course is primarily aimed at teaching you the science and art of the appreciating poetry. If you pause a while on the issue of appreciations to ask yourself what is it, it's no different from, say, appreciating a person. We can say why we like a person. How did the friends of Sita describe Ram, whom they had seen in Pushpavatika? To quote a well-known couplet from Tulsidas, the Ramcharitramanas. This will be the couplet. In the couplet above, the Sakhis tell Sita about the place where they saw Ram and Lakshman and that they were dark and fair complexion. Beyond that, they fail to communicate anything, as they say that the eyes that saw them had no tongue and the tongue which can describe them had no sight. The silences in the two lines are loud. Appreciating a poem also involves providing reason for liking a poem or for that matter not liking it. However, we begin by appreciating the portraits on the first and third covers. Those portraits must have evoked some feelings in you. I will tell you what I thought about them. There begins our exercise of appreciations or reading, as you will see. Finally, we end up in the next unit with the brief appreciations of John Keats on first looking into Chapman's Homer. The criteria for the appreciations of paintings and poems are different. Hence, after commenting upon two portraits, we turn towards two of the most important criteria evaluating a poem. In this unit, on this course, we try to ask not so much what has been said, but why did the poet say so, and how did he or she convey her or his meaning? We try to identify some of the possible answers of the second questions in the next unit. Applications of the poems in this course will answer the third questions in the next unit. However, we formally discuss prosody, which is a distinctive features of poetic language. The general features of language and literature have been discussed in the courses of aspects of language and literature criticism. Both these courses, however, will help your own reading of poems on this course. However, you need not until you have read those two courses. Now let's move to the 1.2 unit. In this block, there are two cover illustrations. One of the first cover page, another on the third. Both were done by the same artist. Did you notice that they represent two divergent attitudes, two disparate ways of life? Many of my friends thought that the woman with a string instruments was Saraswati and goddess of learning. This lady is not sitting on the back of a swan. She has only two hands, whereas the goddess has four hands, and apart from the veena in the two, she holds a book and a lotus flower in the other two hands. The lady on the first cover is like a common human being in that she has just two hands. Why then did so many of my friends think that the lady on the first cover is Saraswati? Wasn't it because our observations are often loaded or informed by theory? As you might like to say, through this course we seek reorient your affective facilities. Now move to the 12.1 expose. So many of my friends thought that the lady on the first cover page is Saraswati because they brought their appreciations to the portrait, their prejudice standards of evaluations unawares. This is what we do when we see a picture or read a poem, a short story or a novel. One of the functions of this course is to prepare you appreciate British poetry. For in reading a book or appreciating a piece of art, we are like travels in the distant land. We can find only so much understanding and worth in it as we carry there. We must infer so much, wrote Emerson, and supply chasm in the record. The history of the universe of symptomatic and life is mnemonical. If the course is meant, you may ask to enhance your ability to appreciate British culture, poetry in particular. Why did we not use British portraits for the cover? To make a point. Howsoever deep your understanding of British culture, you as an Indian and eventually evaluate these poems by your taste, your understanding and ability to appreciate art in general. The appeal of the two covers illustrations, no matter how much they may be rooted in the certain events or traditions is ultimately universal. Let's begin with the portraits of the shepherd on the third cover page. Kitaki told me that the man in the heart portraits is Godo's Pahan, whom she met in Pandra village of Ratu Road on the outskirts of Ranchi. However, the man in the sketch reminded me of a host of poets. The first English poet, Siedimons, 670 AD, was a shepherd. I lived at the monastery of Abbas Hilda at Whitby. We get an account of his life from Bed's ecclesiastical history of the English people, which was originally written in Latin. Sidimon has often been called at the Anglo-Saxon Milton the greatest work attributed to him. The so-called paraphrase was discovered in the 17th century. It is, however, a work of many hands. Do you know how Sidimon is believed to have begun writing poetry? Sidimon, according to Bede, was an unlearned herdsman. So ignorant of singing was he that sometimes at feast, where it was a custom that for the pleasure of all each guest should sing in turn, he would rise from the table when he saw a harp coming to him and go home ashamed. Now it happened once that he did this thing at a certain festivity and went to the stable to care for the horses, this duty being assigned to him for the night. As he slept at the usual time, one stood by him saying, Sedimon, sing me something. I cannot sing. He answered that is why I came hither from the feast. But he who spoke to him said again, Sedimon sings to me, and he said, what shall I sing? And he said, sing the beginning of the created things. Sedimon sang, and the next day when he told the sweater of the abbess about his song, he took him to Abbess Hilda, who heard from his episodes. Later, more episodes from the Latin Bible were explained to him and he turned them into song. Godo Fahan is not a hermit for any monastery, however, he is a farmer like William Langland in 1332 to 1339 Piers, the plugman. However, Godo's Fahan is a man of our times. He received no visitations the heavens as Piers does. Piers is confident, Godos is not. Piers is angry but hopeful. Godos has a cheerless prospects before him. Perhaps Godos Fahan is more like Robert Burns in 1795 to 96, who in Henry's Mackenzie's How Wordsworth Heaven thought plugman Burns Wordsworth thought walked in glory and in a joy, following his plug along the mountainside. We are not aware of Burns' glory and joy, son of a poor tenant farmer as he was. His father, who gave him good education for his station, died when he was 25 years old, finding it difficult to support the large family and to escape the life of a laborer. He intended to emigrate to Jamaica. Looking at Godo's Fahan portrait, I was reminded to Burns' Old Man in Man was made of morn, a Dodge. August 1785. The sun that overhangs yon moors, over spreading far and wide, where hundreds labors to support a hotly lording sprite. I have seen the weary winter sun twice 40 times return, and every time has added proofs that man was made of mourns. This old man in the poem was 80-year old, burned himself, lived not even the 40 years. His life of toil and labor taught him the unity of man, mentally and particularly of the economically depressed sections of the society. He supported the French Revolutions, especially in its early phase, and wrote, for a that and that's it's coming yet for that's man to man and the world's or shall and the words out. Shall brothers be for a that? Bonds a strongly Calvinistic society. Even Burns' father William Burns had rejected it in a favor of humanist virtues of kindness and tolerance. Burns questions nature's laws that made men high and lowly and ordered their estate. He asks, if I am designed beyond lording slaves by nature, its law designed, why was a independent wish ere planted in my mind? If not, why am I subject to his cruelty to scorn? Or why has man the will and power to make his fellow bound? No answer to the questions of significant Burns strove for the fraternity of all mankind, and he also wished to see humankind in harmony with nature. When his crucial counter's cutting blade of the plug passed through the initial cell, he emphasized it as with a comrade. I'm truly sorry man dominion has broken nature's social union and justifies that ill opinion which makes three title at me, thy poor earthborn companion and fellow mortal. Godot Fahan surrounded by his sheep while a drop trickling down his enjoying nature's social union. He is one with nature, the mother of our vegetable life. Godot Fahans reminded me also a Therio from 1817 to 1862 who thought a man of nature was also a revolutionary no matter how passive and distant guru of Gandhiji. However, Thoreau was an intellectual which Godot's is not. Godot's wife's possessiveness is like Emerson 1803 to 1882 or Wordsworth 1770 to 1850 and reminds us of quite a few of our latter's characters. Simeon Liu, who had once been a retainer to an aristocratic family, has a long blue livery coat that's fair behind and fair before, but he is poor 80-year-old. In his youth he was a runner at a game for his master of Ivor Hall in the shire of Cardigan. On one of his errands, he lost his right eye. Wordsworth tells us that he helped the least cut the root of an old tree as they were too weak for any arduous work. Simeon returned the poet's help with thanks and praises on his lips and tears in his eyes, which made Wordsworth recall tile different attitudes of better men. I have heard of hurting kind deeds with coldness yet returning. Alas, the gratitude of men has not often left me mourning. These words reminds me the bombsman and mate of Mount. The soldiers Wordsworth met at one night of the road between Netherstowey and Alfoxden had been discharged on landing after his return from West Indies, where 40,000 of the British troops had died of yellow fever. This discharged soldier must have been able-bodied once. His legs were long, so long and shapeless that I looked at them, forgetful of the body they sustained. He was still in his uniform, trying to reach Leonie although he had landed 10 days ago. However, he could not sleep. Harassed by the dogs as he had been, Wordsworth found him a place to spend light night. Able bodies, somewhat like Simeon Lee and the discharged soldiers in their better days, was a sheep. Wordsworth met weeping on the road in the village Holford next Alfoxden. Wordsworth narrates his story in the last of the flock. Me was not victim of the another's curses, such as the hairy kill of Godey Blake, but of his own indigence. Godot's Fahan, strong as he appears in the rather like large character in the resolutions of the independence, rather like the pelter in the poem of the title and the narration in the ruined cottage. Then, like the cold crumbler beggar who his first word is, Bo bent his eyes forever on the ground, he plies his very journey, seeing still and seldom knowing that he sees. And yet Godot's is a life in nature, somewhat like Michael and Shepherd, neither gay, perhaps not cheerful, yet with objects and with hopes, living a life of eager industry. Goforth appears to be still industrious and leading a life in nature, keeping away from the light city. 1.2.3 we will cover in the next part of this unit number 1, and then another video will be the unit number 2. That's it from it.